So just having somebody having a little ISO 9001 board on the wall doesn't necessarily mean they adhere by all of these standards. So I just have to use some of these small auditing methods. And I speak Chinese, so I can randomly ask some of the employees, and then I can feel whether they are actually trained or they're not.
What are you doing on your side to then help your clients choose a reliable power supply manufacturer?
Yeah, we have, of course, over the 20 years, we have worked with several ones, and you do your experience. So we have quite some good ones, and we had ones which we would not consider so soon again, simply because the procedures are not in place. And it's also a lot of training. I mean, in China, there's a huge employee turnover. So something that might be good this year because people were doing it diligently, they may not be there next year, and then the other people have different attitudes. So you really have to understand how they manage their factories. They are well managed companies, I have to say. They are very well managed companies. Also about the auditing companies, a lot of them have beautiful certificate, ISO 9001 and this and that. But do they really live like it?
Is it possible to order those things from Taobao and just put it on your wall? I mean, are those things
There
actually?
are, some people say some of the certificates are photoshopped. And when you try to look at the registration number, it may not match the company registration that is in the certificate. So just having somebody having a little ISO 9001 board on the wall doesn't necessarily mean they adhere by all of these standards. So I don't so much rely on those certificates. I look at the procedures. We are ISO 9001 certified ourselves. So we are annually audited by TUV Rhineland, and every employee is asked how they do things and what they do, and they have to explain why they do this and how they've been trained. So I just have to use some of these small auditing methods. And I speak Chinese, so I can randomly ask some of the employees, and then I can feel whether they are actually trained or they're not.
Okay.
Because we are going through this process every year, and we are training our staff. So if the training and the communication of quality values is happening in the company, then people will give you a decent response. And it's not the top manager. You have to ask the staff on the line, in the procurement office, in the quality department, at the machine maintenance. Those guys, if they are well trained, then there's a good management in the company. But if they say, "Oh, I have to ask my boss," yeah, I'll do it when my boss asks me to.
You might actually ask some of the lower level people a question, and if they don't know what they're talking about, you know something's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, because that comes from the top down and drips down. So that's kind of something that in every organization, if the leader provides a certain kind of works with a certain values, then it drips down. Yeah.
It's very important, very important to see how it really goes through, and it's not just, oh, we need to have the certificate. So what's the fastest skill to get the certificate on the wall, and then ignore and continue to go on.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times I'm coming into this talk thinking we're going to talk about engineering, but then it always kind of comes back to the human element more often than not, which is really interesting.
Humans make it, humans break it. People
Yeah.
make it, people break it. That's just the reality, the real world reliable down on the floor. And that's, I think, when you think about coming back to the procurement managers that sit behind their desk somewhere thousands of kilometers away, and they have to make an assessment. Am I going to buy from this factory? Am I going to buy from that factory? How do I check it? What do I do? Am I going to fly myself over there every then and again? Or whom do I count on? Yeah, and those situations arise. And then again, it comes also to the market, depends on the market they're serving. I mean, we all know that if you're a brand company, your brand has a certain reputation, and you don't want to break the promises that your brand delivers. Otherwise, your marketing costs will also be very questionable. But actually ensuring this at a reasonable cost, that's quite a job. And since a lot of manufacturing is in Asia now, a lot of components are only available in Asia. Yes, it can be done, but you have to do it carefully and selectively. Not so easy.
So for this power supply design part, does that ever go through you and your clients and your customers, the entrepreneurs and their engineering team? Or do you, generally speaking, look for a ready-made solution? Because as I understand, China has so many options.
It depends on the application, but the majority we try to don't do everything from scratch again. We try to pick up something that's very, very close to where we are. But then we look at the interior design and we have a look. Is the temperature profile done right? The components selected, are they genuine power transistors or something weird? Are the EMC reports that they provide? This was a specially prepared sample just to pass the EMC report, and the series product may not because they save another $50 on some components which are only in the EMC sample. Those little things, to look at. So we have access to secondary labs where we can do a scan, and if the scan looks very different from the EMC sample, that would raise red flags.
Right, definitely. What are the associated shipping costs with power supplies that procurement managers and potential customers should know about?
Well, again, comes a human element in it. The time to make a decision to procure something. And then if you would go through a normal manufacturing cycle, maybe for power supplies, typically 4 to 8, 12 weeks. And then you ship this, let's say, from China to the US, it's about 3 weeks. From China to Europe, it's about 8 weeks now, after all the ships have to go around the Horn of Africa. We're talking about a complete procurement time of minimum 13, but more likely to be 20 weeks.
20 weeks.
20 weeks from making decision to buy to actually arriving the product at your site at a reasonable cost. Often they don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we offer our customers the opportunity to say, look, I understand you need something to start first. So if this is a critical process, I would dispatch one of my staff to the production site when they enter the last stage of production, witness the end quality test as well as the burn-in test, then select a minimum quantity from these production, have them air shipped directly to a customer, let them also verify the quality, then let the production be complete, get this shipped on the vessel. It will help substantially. You know why? Because the factory knows my product's under scrutiny. I better don't screw up here.
So what you do is you buy a small sample size, fly them over to your customer. They start using them. They start testing them. Meanwhile, the bigger shipment is being made, and then the manufacturer feels like the microscope is on him.
Yeah.
To do a great job.
Yes, because especially if you have a person on the ground, it makes huge difference.
Oh, interesting.
And then if they know the first batch is already at the customer side, so they won't have to. They cannot speculate on being paid before they get detected that something's wrong.
Right. So when do they get paid?
Well, normally you pay. A typical Chinese payment term is 30% deposit on order, 70% against the shipping document.
Okay. So they can compromise their 70% if their products are not performing.
But they don't want to.
Right.
But normally, because you cannot clear the shipment upon arrival without getting the wreath on the bill of lading, so you reasonably don't have a chance to inspect the goods before you actually paid. And getting a refund out of China, that's a science all of itself, which I haven't even mastered.
Right.
properly. So is a challenge. That's why we say, okay, if somebody's on the ground and they pick up the things, then the factories are screwed as well. Even though it costs some extra money, it's a huge risk reducer. So if procurement managers already faced some questionable deliveries and impacting their supply chain, and they need somebody to do that job, we have either our own people or we have a network amongst the Melchers group to dispatch people on the ground, simply to put the focus on it, to analyze and detect those parts which already were kind of risky in the past. That's a big risk reducer.
Yeah. And this is less about getting the product as fast as possible to your customer and more about ensuring the manufacturer does a great job. Sounds like, or are you actually killing two birds in one stone?
Yeah, I think too, because if you think about what happens if something goes wrong. Let's say normally power supply itself you're not selling, right? You're selling a power supply together with your other product. Let's say you have a $5 power supply to support the energy of a $150 product. And now, oh yeah, I've launched my product. You start selling. And then it turns out you get a bad batch of $5 power supplies. Now you have maybe a couple thousand products for $150 sitting in your warehouse. Your customer waiting for the product. You can't ship out the product because you don't have a power supply. And then you go back to your manufacturer, but you screwed up. I need more power supplies. You say, oh, the lead time of my components are 6 weeks. I don't have the money right now. So now what are we going to do? You sit hundred thousands of dollars of warehouse stock that you cannot ship because you ordered a power supply that was good as a sample but not good in the production.
Right.
We're talking about $20,000, let's say it's 4,000 power supplies at $5 a piece. You're talking about $20,000 delivery, but that stops $400,000 worth of goods going out of your warehouse.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have spent the $2,000 to $3,000 to take care of that matter early.
Now, is this something that is kind of a standard practice in the manufacturing world, or is this something that kind of like an innovation that you have come up with?
There are QC companies, some of the jobs that is being done.
Yeah.
But I would say there are certain buyers that think they can save that money and then have to get hurt first before being taught the other way.
Right.
Or, of course, if you have very reliable long-term suppliers that have the right attitude, I don't say that they are not, but I would say the chance of hitting the other ones is quite high in China and also in other parts of Asia. One of the biggest challenges we always face is in March.
Margin.
Every year, March.
Oh, March.
You know why? After Chinese New Year, you have a lot of new staff, and new staff make a lot of new and old mistakes.
Yeah.
It's very common in the manufacturing. That's why most of my staff, when it comes to March, April, right after Chinese New Year, they travel a lot because they have to make sure that the newcomers are aligned with the already pre-discussed requirements and way of doing it.
Yeah, that's why that's a huge benefit for you being here in Taiwan to easily have access to.
Yeah, and no
Asia.
language barrier. This is also very important because our people, we all Mandarin speaking, also speak all English and have some, usually one other language at least. And we are 2 hours away from Shenzhen.
Right.
We are 2 hours away from Shanghai. We are 2 hours, 1 hour 40 away from Ningbo. Yeah, we're in the same time zone.